The teacher banged his fist against the desk, his jaw ticking as he pointed at her. "Take it off now," he growled. Liquid fear bubbled in her stomach as reality dawned on her. The teacher was serious. She didn't know what he'd do to her if she didn't comply, but the teacher should have known who her dad was before deciding to single her out like this. He stalked closer, his burning gaze focused on her. "Maddie, I said take the hat off." "But," she stammered, ready to plead her case. She couldn't do what the teacher was asking, not today of all days. She was still reeling from the medicine pumping through her body, from the pain that had now become a part of her young life. She'd barely made it to school today, and didn't have the energy to take on such a confrontation head-on. Couldn't the teacher at least hear her case out? Maddie Dunham took a deep breath as the teacher walked to her. Her lips quivered where she sat, her fingers together with them. Pain and fear had melded into one within her, rendering her frozen. The teacher reached her vicinity, anger painted all over him. "I won't repeat myself," he roared. With one swift move, he reached for her cap, yanking it off her head. Gasps took the atmosphere as the truth was finally revealed. The only thing Maddie could wish for now was the end to be swift and painless. But for Maddie, this semester was supposed to be different. The last 2 years had been agonizing for her, and she'd wished, with everything that she was, that things would improve. For the first time in a long time, she felt like her wish was finally getting answered. The pain she'd been suffering through had subsided, and Maddie could finally go back to school. She had no idea what awaited her there. But for her, wearing that hat wasn't a choice she relished. She'd hoped for something different, something that wouldn't expose her and her deepest insecurities like this. Sitting in that chair, she watched as the entire class stared at her, some of them giggling while others were awash with pity. She was finding out how unfair the world was, and to think it all started with a birthday party. Maddie's issues started on her best friend's birthday 2 years prior. Everything was going great until a sharp pain struck her chest. Only 11 years old, she didn't know what was happening. She looked around wide-eyed, thinking one of her friends had accidentally jammed a knife through her. But everyone was busy with the festivities, unaware of what she was going through. But it would only get worse from there. The second jolt of pain came, this one worse than the first. Maddie yelped, her hands jumping to her chest where the pain originated. The third hit her, a wave of agony that swept from her feet up to her shoulders. She spiraled onto the floor as the pain settled in her brain. She couldn't explain what was going on, but she knew her life would never be the same. Maddie woke up to find bright white lights above her. She was lying on bright blue sheets dressed in a light, similarly colored gown. Her mom was seated beside her, tears covering her eyes, as a strange man dressed in a white coat spoke to her. They all kept quiet when they realized Maddie was awake. Although Maddie was only 11 years old, she understood the gravity of the situation. She knew her mom to be among the strongest people in the world. Seeing her shed tears like this could only mean something terrible had occurred. "What's happening, Mommy?" Maddie asked, and her mother explained everything. "You'll be fine," she insisted midway through her explanation. "You and I will beat this thing, okay?" What Maddie had suffered from was an overwhelming spike of pain caused by a disorder known as chronic recurrent multifocal osteomyelitis. A disease associated with children, it results in the inflammation of the patient's bones and is usually accompanied by chronic pain. Hearing her mom explain everything tore Maddie apart because in the woman's voice, she could listen to one thing. In her mom's voice, Maddie could hear the sound of failure. Her mother looked at her like she'd already lost her. How bad was this disease? Couldn't Maddie beat it? She remembered the pain and how bad it was. It had caused her body to shut down, seemingly from shock. Would this be her life now? She should have known that things would only get worse from here. The doctor enrolled Maddie in a program to help stabilize her condition. This saw a complete shift in the 11-year-old's lifestyle. First, she visited the hospital twice weekly, getting shots meant to keep the chronic pain at bay while also mending her bones. Second, the doctor advised her mom to limit her time outside, insisting on Maddie needing her rest. Third, Maddie saw less of her mom since the hospital bills were outstanding, and the woman needed to take on more shifts at her nursing job to sustain them. But this was only the beginning. Maddie had never really been close to her dad. He'd separated from her mom when she was still a baby, and would only see her on special days like her birthday. But now that she was sick, the man dropped by whenever he felt like it. He'd bring her gifts and tell her stories from around the world, seemingly wanting to bond with her. Would Maddie ever forgive him for leaving? Although Maddie's dad was trying his best to be in her life, the girl hated that her condition was the only reason he acted this way. Where was he when things were good? Why hadn't he ever shown this same level of concern? She didn't even know what he did for a living. Although Maddie didn't outright tell him to leave, she always spaced out whenever he walked through the front door, wanting to see her. She had no idea that he'd be the one to save her down the road. Most patients with Maddie's disorder are usually incurable, but for others, treatment is possible. Often treatment lasts months or years. Half of children battling it respond well to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which help them regain full health. The doctors put Maddie on the needed medication, hoping her body would respond positively. But although this was great news, it came with a terrible side effect that would leave Maddie's life in shambles. Maddie was positively responding to the treatment the doctors were subjecting her to, but she was also losing large parts of her hair because of the treatment. As a girl, she'd long been attached to her hair. She'd had the longest and most luscious mane in school, with many of her friends telling her they wished their hair was like hers. Maddie didn't know if she could return to school with her hair falling off. It started with 1 or 2 strands a day, but before she knew it, fistfuls of her hair were falling off. It became so bad that half of her head was covered in great patches. It didn't help that the pain that had been there before had suddenly returned. Things were slowly turning bleak, and the now 12-year-old girl didn't know what she'd do. That's when her mom came up with a brilliant idea. "How about we get you a wig?" Maddie's mom asked with a bright smile, even though Maddie could see the worry and concern in her eyes. "Yeah," she said, hoping to alleviate the woman's stress. "I'd really like that, Mom." Her mom wasted no time getting in touch with the Little Princess Trust, a charity that provides real hair wigs free of charge to children and young people who have lost their own hair through diseases and conditions such as cancer. The future couldn't look any brighter. Little Princess Trust wasted no time sending over a few wigs for Maddie to try. She chose the one she loved the most and agreed to shave all her hair so that she could start donning it immediately. For the first time in months, she saw her mom finally smile with no sadness lingering within her irises. Maddie thought things were finally looking up for their family, when, in reality, everything was about to go further downhill. Maddie started going to school with a wig. Although the pain plaguing her body had remained, she was glad she could resume her education and wouldn't let anything get in the way of graduating to the next class. Maddie continued her education throughout the year, passing her classes and continuing life as usual. But one day, she realized her wig's cap had become too loose, forcing her to take it off so her mom could fix it. Maddie's mom was particularly worried about her. Although she admired her daughter's bravery and courage, she knew how horrible other kids could be. She was concerned that something would happen where Maddie's head would somehow be exposed, and it would leave her embarrassed. However, Maddie was adamant, and she wanted to go to school, come hell or high water. She loved school and her friends, and didn't want to miss out even more since she was in the hospital. She had a lot of schoolwork to catch up on as it was, so to her, it was just easier to go. Maddie's mother noticed that ever since she began treatment for her sickness, there was a certain confidence in Maddie that delighted her. Her daughter was so courageous. However, she felt a weird feeling in the pit of her stomach. Something didn't feel right, and she hoped that Maddie had made the right decision by going to school without her wig on. She knew that the school had some strict rules, and she hoped that they would make an exception for Maddie due to her illness. Surely, they would be kind enough to do that. She watched as her daughter confidently walked around the house with her bald head. She didn't have a care in the world. She felt strong and in charge of her life. Maddie's mother just hoped that nobody would make fun of her. The cruelty of kids nowadays astounded her, and she wanted Maddie to be safe from bullies at all costs. But would she? "What can I put in your lunch bag for school tomorrow, honey?" she called out to Maddie as she watched her doing her homework. She was the best daughter in the world. "Anything you make is delicious, Mom. I don't mind whatever you make." But Maddie's mother wanted to try one last chance to get Maddie to reconsider. But would Maddie think about it? Maddie's mom asked her to stay home for a day, as she had the wig fixed. But Maddie couldn't relent now, after how much she'd achieved in school. She wanted to show her mom that she had this under control. "It's okay," she said. "I can wear a baseball cap." She rushed upstairs and returned with it, waving it before her mom's face. She had no idea what wearing that cap would lead to. Knowing just how stubborn her daughter could be, Maddie's mom agreed to her request. By now, some of Maddie's hair had grown back, although this only accentuated the patches on her head. Her mom looked at the cap in her hand before coming over and helping her fit it on. She broke a smile and said, "You are the bravest and most beautiful girl I have ever known." She couldn't have predicted what was about to happen to her daughter. Maddie had been through a lot in her life. She was embarrassed by her bald spots, but thankfully the baseball cap would save her. She would learn to love to wear it. It made her feel more confident and less self-conscious about her appearance. Maddie was excited about going to school. She couldn't wait to show off her new look to her friends. But she had no idea what was coming to her. Where some girls would see it as a tragedy, she saw an opportunity. But the girl had no idea what was coming. Maddie wanted to see what people thought of the cap before she went to school. She knew her parents loved her and would say it looked good, but they didn't understand how cruel others could be. As much as she appreciated their words, she needed to see what others thought about it. Just as she thought about what she would do, she decided to go to the fridge to get a snack. But when she looked at the fridge door, she saw something. It was the perfect reason to go out. They were out of milk. She thought about how sad her father would be, not being able to have milk in his coffee the next morning. She would also need it for her cereal. This was the universe giving her an opportunity. She just needed to convince her mother. Before she went to school the next day, she needed to test the baseball cap out. She approached her mother with her cutest face and said, "Mom, do you know that we're out of milk?" Her mother looked up at her. "Oh, I didn't realize. I'll get some tomorrow, okay?" she replied. But Maddie was determined. She asked her mother if she would be able to go to the store herself to get it. She just needed some money, and she could run an errand for her. She knew that, normally, her mother would object, but her eyes showed her how important it was. Reluctantly, she sighed and said, "Okay, sweetie, just be careful, okay? I'll see you in a few minutes." Before handing her daughter a few dollars, she got permission from her mom to walk to the nearby grocery store to get some milk for her. Now she would find out the truth about what people thought. But the girl was only going to be heartbroken. She was a little nervous about covering her lack of hair, but she was determined to be brave. As she walked through the aisles of the store, she couldn't help but feel like something was staring at her. She tried to ignore it and kept walking. She felt more exposed than she had in months, but the only way to get over it was to go out in public. But something was going to happen that would shatter the little girl's self-esteem. That's when it happened. She heard someone whisper behind her. She didn't expect any students to be in the store in the afternoon, but she was gravely mistaken. There were two girls in a class above her. One laughed and said, "Look at that bald girl with the baseball cap." Maddie felt her heart sink. How could someone be so mean to someone else like this? She had hoped that the baseball cap would make her feel more normal, but instead, it seemed to be drawing even more attention to her. It was the worst feeling in the world, having people laugh at her and talk behind her back. She recognized the girls. They were two of the meanest girls in her school. She should have expected them to be so harsh, but someone else was watching things unfold. She wanted to cry and run out of the store, but she knew she had to be brave. Feeling embarrassed and ashamed, Maddie quickly grabbed the milk and made her way to the checkout. But as she was waiting in line, she felt something behind her. She knew that she was being stared at by someone else. Then she felt someone tap her on the shoulder. Who was it this time? She turned around to see a young girl about her age smiling at her. She was also from her school, but she was a grade or two below her. She expected the little girl to mock her like the other students. Maddie didn't know if she would be able to take it. She prepared herself for the worst, but she could never have expected what the little girl would say to her. The little girl beamed up at her. "I like your baseball cap," the girl said. "It's really cool." Maddie was surprised, but also grateful. She smiled back at the girl and said, "Thank you." They struck up a conversation, and Maddie soon forgot all about the stares and whispers. She realized that there were people out there who didn't care about her appearance and just saw her for who she was. Maddie got home and gave her mother the milk with a wide grin. "Looks like someone had a good time out," her mother said, returning a smile. Maddie nodded and went to her room. She needed to prepare her things for the next school day. With all the worrying about her hair, she forgot about doing her homework. She knew that her teacher wasn't lenient and often picked on her. Maddie thought that she would only get picked on if she didn't get her homework done, But she had no idea that the teacher had more in store than just that. They were going to ruin her confidence with one petty request. But for now, the girl had no idea what was going to happen and worked on her homework. She was excited for the next day at school, but she should have stayed home. Still, Maddie felt a sense of relief. She knew that there would always be people who judged her based on her looks, but she also knew that there were people who wouldn't. And that was enough for her. She felt proud of herself for being brave and for not letting other people's opinions bring her down. But the next school day would be disastrous, all because of her teacher. Maddie went to school the following day, looking beautiful with her baseball cap. The pain from her illness seemed to have had it out for her today because she couldn't walk for 5 steps before wincing. It struck her in tiny pricks, not as overwhelming as usual, but enough to irritate her. It would pull her out of conversations with her friends and make her grit her teeth as she tried to stamp it down. Was it foreshadowing the inevitable? As Maddie walked through the hallways, she got many looks and was teased relentlessly by some. But most of her friends understood her reason for wearing the baseball cap. However, it didn't stop some boys from calling her names, which made her very sad. "Hey, check this one. Looks like she's a spy going undercover. Hey, what are you hiding under there?" one boy shouted while his friends were practically lying on the ground laughing. But it didn't stop there. One of the boys attempted to pull the cap off of Maddie's head. He was hell-bent on humiliating her in front of the whole school. Maddie tried with all her might to fend him off, and with the help of her friends, they were able to avoid Maddie being exposed. "What the hell is wrong with you? Why are you picking on her? She didn't do anything to you," yelled Maddie's best friend, Alyssa. However, Alyssa's interference didn't help the situation. "Stay out of this! It's none of your business! Now scram!" he shouted, but Alyssa decided to stand her ground. But the boys were too strong for her. They eventually pushed her out of the way to get through to Maddie. "Please just leave me alone. I don't want any trouble. We're just trying to get to our class," pleaded Maddie. With that, the boy tried once again to yank Maddie's cap off, but he didn't succeed. Maddie had already crouched down on the ground and put her arms over her head. "What are you hiding, huh? Makes me want to rip that cap from your head even more now," the boy threatened. "Please don't. I just want to be left alone," Maddie yelled. It seemed that all the yelling had got the attention of a teacher who had come out of her class to see what was going on in the hallway. "What's going on here? Everybody get to your classes immediately, or you'll get detention." All the students who were watching scattered away. Poor Maddie and Alyssa were left holding each other on the ground. "You two better get to class. Off you go," the teacher said, and the 2 girls ran off to their class. But the situation with Maddie was far from over. Maddie sat in class next to her best friend. The bell for the first period had already rung, and it was only a matter of seconds before the math teacher, Mr. Hudson, walked into class. Although math wasn't Maddie's favorite subject, she enjoyed it nonetheless. Mr. Hudson, though strict and seemingly always in a foul mood, was a good teacher, but today he would show Maddie his true colors. "Miss Dunham," the teacher called out the minute he walked into class. His eyes were stuck on Maddie. "No caps in class. Please take that off." Maddie's insides heated, worry flooding her system. She came up slowly, eating back the pain in her bones. She needed to explain to the teacher why she couldn't take off her cap. "Miss Dunham, I will not repeat myself. Take that cap off." A muscle ticked in the teacher's jaw, and he banged his fist against the desk, pointing at Maddie. "Take it off now." "I can't," Maddie cried, fear bubbling through her. She had a permission slip in her bag that would prove why she could wear the cap in class, but she had no time to take it out. Mr. Hudson moved menacingly toward her, his burning gaze focused on her. "Maddie, I said take the hat off." Before Maddie could speak, he had yanked the cap off her head. Gasps rented the classroom as everyone saw her head. In the 2 years she'd been fighting her illness, no one, not even her best friend, knew she had issues with her hair. Some of the kids who didn't like her started giggling. The rest looked at her like a sick animal begging to be put down. Tears ate Maddie's sight. Her breath hitched and her lungs constricted. How was this happening? The pain in her bones doubled. It hit her in such furious torrents she started staggering, looking for a way to stay on her feet. The world around her began to spin. Then, everything turned black. Maddie couldn't explain what had happened. Like the last time this had happened, she woke up in a hospital bed. Her mom was by her side, worriedly watching over her. But her dad was also in the room, tall and imposing, as he watched quietly. His chest kept moving up and down where he stood, and his arms were rippling muscles and veins. Was he angry with Maddie for fainting in class? What did he know about what she was going through? He came to her the moment they locked eyes, roughly reaching out for her. But his touch was gentle, his words soothing. He shared a knowing look with Maddie's mom and stood up before storming out. Eric Dunham couldn't believe what had happened to his one and only daughter. How could a teacher do this to her when she'd broken no school rule? Burning with anger, he hopped into his truck and drove straight to Maddie's school. Eric stormed into the school grounds, barely giving anyone any time of day. His sight was set on one person, Maddie's math teacher, Mr. Hudson. The enraged father marched straight to the staff room, where he found the teacher. He was almost throttling him when he realized everyone was staring at him, kids included. The principal came running in a minute later. He pleaded with Eric to follow her to her office, hoping they could resolve this issue. It took everything within Eric to walk away from the teacher. His love for his daughter was enough to make him step away. But this was far from over. The news of Maddie's incident spread like wildfire through the school. An emergency meeting was called with the school board, teachers, and Maddie's parents. The principal, Ms. Anderson, was caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to mediate the situation. The parents argued that Mr. Hudson's actions were unacceptable, demanding disciplinary action against him. On the other hand, the school board was concerned about potential legal repercussions. The atmosphere in the room was tense, filled with accusations and defenses. The incident didn't stay confined within the school walls. Maddie's story reached the local news, sparking public outrage. Parents, community members, and even local activists rallied in support of Maddie, condemning the teacher's actions and demanding justice. The school found itself under intense scrutiny, with people questioning its commitment to inclusivity and understanding students' unique challenges. Maddie became the reluctant face of a movement for empathy and compassion in schools. In the midst of the public outcry, Maddie's parents decided to take legal action against the school and Mr. Hudson. They hired a formidable lawyer known for fighting against injustices in the education system. The courtroom became the battleground for a legal war that would decide not only Maddie's fate, but also the precedent for how schools should treat students with medical conditions. The media circus intensified as cameras crowded the courtroom, capturing every emotion etched on Maddie's face and the determination in her parents' eyes. As the legal battle unfolded, shocking revelations about the school's negligence came to light. It was discovered that Maddie had submitted a detailed medical report and a permission slip explaining her condition to the school at the beginning of the semester. The school had failed to communicate this crucial information to her teachers. Maddie's parents were devastated to learn that the school had overlooked their daughter's well-being, leading to the traumatic incident. The public's sympathy for Maddie grew stronger as the school's incompetence was exposed. The legal battle ended with a settlement in favor of Maddie's family. The school agreed to implement new policies ensuring better communication between students, parents, and teachers regarding medical conditions. Mr. Hudson faced disciplinary action, and the incident prompted a nationwide conversation about the rights of students with chronic illnesses. While Maddie's family celebrated the victory, the scars from the incident lingered. Maddie faced a long road of healing, both physically and emotionally. The experience had changed her, but it also ignited a movement that aimed to protect vulnerable students in schools across the country. In the end, Maddie became a symbol of resilience and the catalyst for positive change, turning a personal tragedy into a force for transformation in the education system.
You like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.